Hi, Tim. That was such an amazing video. Really great to learn a little bit more, and happy to have you with us here.
Well, your team did a fantastic job because it looked great. It's
did.
true, but I think it's mostly on your team.
Yeah, no, thanks. So tell us a little bit more about the work that happens at the Armed Services YMCA.
Well, I like to joke and say it's my second best job, the first being that I was a Marine. And the work that we do there is just a lot of fun, but also very important work to support our military families at a time when they need it the most. We help basically provide programs and services to help strengthen the military family, essentially.
Mm-hmm. So who are the sort of people who show up at the Y?
We're going to have all sorts of folks that will attend our programs and services, but to your point, it's usually the junior enlisted. It's going to not necessarily be the E1s or the E2s. It's the E3 through E6, those who have families and kids that tend to struggle a bit more with military lifestyle and the challenges of military life.
So can you say a little bit more? Imagine I know nothing about the military life. You've got your
that's just it, right?
Yeah.
Because some people might say, hey, the military, you're guaranteed job, you're paid on the 1st and the 15th. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, what's the struggle? And oh, by the way, you live in San Diego. It's not bad, 72 degrees.
Right.
So the challenges in the military life will be the transition of moving from duty station to duty station, but also the high stress of the job. And a lot of times the military spouse is carrying all that burden on their shoulders. And it's often the case that if a military spouse has a challenge, they're not going to tell their spouse what's really going on. They have to handle it on their own, more like a single parent, if you will. And by the way, that will kind of segue us into childcare and the challenges around a single family income for our military families.
Yeah, childcare, like housing, has become one of the major affordability issues in the region. Childcare is something that the Armed Services YMCA provides, right? Are military families primarily going there for childcare? Are they looking at private childcare? What is the landscape?
Well, okay, so a couple things there. Childcare is really provided by the United States Navy and the Marine Corps team and Coast Guard teams, right, through Fleet and Family and their child development centers, right? Armed Services YMCA San Diego, Camp Pendleton, 29 Palms, we do provide forms of childcare, and it's something in San Diego we're going to do more of. But what's really true about this statement is that childcare as an issue, as you said, has been ongoing for a very, very long time, and not just for military families, but throughout the region of San Diego and across the country. It's something that we really need to solve and get down to brass tacks, because it's important to get everybody elevated and everybody back to either work or some form of education or anything they can do to improve their child's life and also have a successful life themselves.
So if I'm a military spouse, and if I understand, we're high 90%, we're talking about women who are in this spouse
That's correct,
role.
85%.
Yeah. Okay, so mostly women with small children, maybe teenagers. Where do I turn? If I am looking to put food on the table or find a job or whatnot, how, as a part of the military community, but kind of dropped in the middle of the much larger San Diego and Imperial County.
You're painting the right picture, actually. So I'll say that we could throw some age in there too, that the average age is somewhere in the 20s, right? So you come to San Diego, you're excited, you find out it's a very expensive town, and your spouse is now saying, oh, by the way, I'm leaving for a month. Wait, I just got here. Yeah. And they don't know anyone. So a lot of times the spouses are leaning on each other for connections and connectivity, and also organizations like the Armed Services YMCA and some of the other great partners that are out there. And it is extremely challenging to be in a small, big town and get connected in the childcare. There's a lot of isolation that can happen, that sort of thing. So fortunately, there's programs and services out there at the Armed Services Y, but other great nonprofits and organizations. Lincoln Military Housing does a pretty good job as well to connect military spouses with each other.
And what are the sorts of programs that they're accessing? And we know about, CalFresh and Housing Commission, but are military families just sort of in line with everyone else to get their needs met, or are there special ways that they're?
I would say there's a lot of great programs out there. One in particular is we have one called Mom and Tots, actually, where the moms can come together and talk. And of course, you said earlier 15% are males, so we got to make sure we focus on both sides of that. We have our Horse of the Sun Ranch, where families really get connected as well, and programs like our Achievement Academy, There's another program Lincoln Military Housing runs called Stroller Strides, which is fantastic. But it's just anytime the families can get connected. We also do a military spouse symposium, which is fantastic, and that's another place where the families really get connected as well.
So what would I experience at the symposium?
The symposium is going to be everything from, believe it or not, cooking classes, art classes. We did a fashion show with Nordstrom's last year, or 2 years ago, which is fantastic. And then resume writing skills, all sorts of other things that are out there. And there are some military spouses who are extremely, I like to say they're extremely resilient. Any military spouse is a special person. They're extremely resilient. And some military spouses are very well connected, and you'll see them rise to the top, and they'll be very organized with all the military spouses to help pull them along. And our job at the Armed Services Y is provide programs and services that help that family connection, but also those gray areas. And the gray areas could be where we learn about a circumstance. It doesn't match our programs or services. We reach out to our donors and make sure we handle that situation, which I think we're going to talk about.
Yeah. That's funny. I had some conversations with some spouses, and we were talking about this sort of question of being quote unquote unemployable because of this stigma or bias about, oh, well, you're just going to move on in 2 years. Or you constantly out to get your kids or do the this or the that, and wanting to really flip that coin, flip that narrative and say, that is not unreliability. That is resilience. That is adaptability. That's the absolute ability to deal with anything that comes on and do it with a smile on your face.
Exactly. So, I mean, here you have the cost of childcare is roughly $1,000 per child. And so we all know the story of, well, gee, if I work, how much money will I earn versus the childcare sort of scenario. And for a long time, there was this trend, and it's a good trend, where all of our corporate partners were saying, gee, we want to hire transitioning service members. We'd like to transitioning service members. Very trendy thing a few years ago, and it's a good trend to have, but the spouse was forgotten. It was like we forgot about the spouse. And the military spouses are so resilient. So what would it be like if we had childcare at the employer's location? And what would it be like if those military spouses could go and have an amazing job that they're working in and thriving? Because our goal is not to have families in food lines. Our goal is to have them out of the lines, right? We could certainly partner with many organizations and set up military food distributions all over San Diego. That's not a solution. Root cause. Actually, I call that wound worshiping. When you get so focused on the issue, you say, well, let's just do food lines everywhere, right? But that's not solving much. What you really need to solve is a root cause of what this is, which is training, education, employment, or whatever it looks like, something healthier to get these families out of the line and thriving, right? I like to say that nonprofits should try not to exist.
Right. Yep. Right? Work ourselves out of a job, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So let me just ask this sort of obvious but maybe naive question of, we have entrusted ourselves to a vast military economy. San Diego's #1 economic driver, right, is the military. And these families have committed their lives, put themselves at great risk to serve in that capacity. Why is there any need within a military family? Why are we not, as a country, taking care of them?
It is the question of the day, and it's so easy for a nonprofit to say, hey, funders, we have food insecurity in the military, give us a grant and we're going to go ahead and solve that through food distributions. That's low-level thinking. It's more complex, and the Hunger Coalition says that food insecurity is an economic issue. It's way deeper and way vast. We've already talked about a little bit is the mental mindset of a family, but also cooking classes, shopping for the right foods, to take care of the family. It's easier just to go to fast food, which is expensive and unhealthy. So cooking classes on the list. Financial literacy is another factor. Cost-effective childcare, and really helping that family thrive. It's multifaceted. So it's easy to say food is the issue, but again, hunger doesn't discriminate, doesn't care who you are. But we need to solve that issue at a deeper level. When it comes to the military itself, we find that we've done economic studies. The military actually pays decent as far as livable wages is concerned. So I don't believe it's a pay issue with the DoD per se. However, it's, as I said, it's a complex issue where we can address collectively. And one of the areas where the nonprofits, we like to say it, we talk about collaboration. Sometimes it's a buzzword, but it's an area where we can do better.
what would you do? I know a couple, 2-3 years ago, there was an effort to sort of map the 100 or so military-connected nonprofits in the region.
Almost feel like it's 1,500, the nonprofits that are connected. And I really feel that, I do remember that process and the mapping. It's a great effort. We have to have follow through, right? And I think the way you do that is where the rubber meets the road, maybe 1 or 2 partners at a time. So start small. We have Navy Marine Corps Relief is a good partner of ours. Support the Enlisted Project, maybe another great partner. San Diego Food Bank, Feeding San Diego. So we can all collectively come together and just start small, and start building those real collaborations that where the rubber meets the road, which I think our food distribution is doing. It's more than a distribution. We call it distribution with dignity. And it's got multiple resources for families to participate in and engage with. So we call it a gateway to the other programs and services, so they can find some other solutions they may need.
Yeah. How often are people coming back? Do you have sort of a consistent group of folks who are engaging, or is it sort of one-off, or are you able to get them along a spectrum of
so let me just say this, that pre-COVID, we had about 220 families going through our food distribution, and we're running 2 different locations. During COVID, that number increased to about 1,600 families. And then it actually increased higher than that because we're serving the meals, the lunches through Feeding San Diego. And now we're seeing it taper off, so to speak. So we're about roughly 600-700 families are coming through the food distribution itself. But I smiled a little bit because our families are just that, to Armed Services Wide. They're literally connected to us. They trust us, and we have just a fantastic relationship with so many of them on so many different levels. Because, when we talk about things like childcare as a general term, it doesn't sound very humanistic. When I think of the Achievement Academy, I think of the young military child. I don't even know if I should be sitting here, honestly. I was, in a military family myself, and then I went in as an enlisted Marine. And I struggled tremendously when I got out of the military, sleeping on my neighbor's floor for 6 months, really challenged, transferring $5 so I could take $20 out of the ATM, those sort of things.
What helped you get to where you are today?
Well, I'll say first and foremost, God, and then also perseverance and a little bit of luck and education. It was a huge challenge. I was a single father for many years, and this is just like what this is why I love my role. We say titles like executive director and all this other stuff. The reality is, I was a junior enlisted who ended up as a single father, transitioning out of the military. By the way, super confident. I'm a Marine. I can do anything. Yeah. And then I get out and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a little more challenging than I thought. So, anyways. I think that's one of the helpful things for the position is I can see through the eyes, at least as a military member, but not as a military spouse. And what we can do is work collectively with all our partners to help solve those issues. But it's more than just buzzwords like childcare and food insecurity and all that stuff. We really need to focus on making a meaningful impact on the individuals we serve at the individual level, and then taking those measurements and elevating them. I think and when you're a nonprofit professional, you don't just go to your job every day. You want to go to sleep at night, and then wake up charged up to know that you'll make a meaningful difference the next day and every single day for that matter. So to me, it's a question of how do we elevate that family? How do we change that child's life? How do we inspire them? And then showcasing that so we can do more of it, right? Through our partners too.
Yeah. You've talked about collaboration a couple of times. What is that sort of secret sauce, right? Catalyst is a network of funders. That is what we do. We seek to build community and connections and collaborations. Yeah. How does that look in your work?
So first off, if it's going to be a clean collaboration, it should be done without the sort of thought of, gee, if we collaborate, we'll get more funding. That's not the right way to approach it. It should start where the rubber meets the road, where the 2 organizations come together and say, you know what, you are peanut butter, I'm jelly. I think we could get together here. And they do something really great and really cool. And if you showcase, if you focus on having amazing programs with high impact, then the donors, the funders will realize that and they'll come. And you have something to really showcase. That's what you should focus on, is the life-changing impact. And I think that's the secret sauce, is having an authentic partner that's not focused on the dollars. They're focused on the impact for the people you serve.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things that's most interesting that we've talked about in your approach is this idea that we're set up to do a certain thing, but we work with families who have complex lives. And there are rules in place, but we can't let rules define us, I think.
Sure.
Can you say a little bit about how that works?
So, okay, I'm going to start with food insecurity as a piece, or let's just talk about dollars, okay? It's a scary thing to be hungry, okay? There are several times and several occasions when military members have driven 15, 20 miles, 20 minutes, low on fuel, and then be turned away and say, we can't serve you because you're an E6.
Yeah.
Something of this nature. Well, now, can you imagine how much courage it takes to muster? You can, I'm sure. It takes a lot of courage to come up and say, I'm going to drive somewhere, and I'm going to humbly say, I need help, and thought I could get help there. Now I've just wasted all that gas, that time, that stress. And we know people under duress are short-term thinkers. They're just thinking, what do I do next, right, sort of thing. So when a nonprofit turns someone away based on a rule they have, you need to think of it from a humanistic standpoint. It's just a human being there, and they need help. And that's your goal, that's your mission. Set aside those rules. Don't pay attention to it. You got to take care of the person right there in front of you. If you trust the process or you trust in God, then they're standing right there in front of you. Just handle it now. And I've even seen it in my organization. When I first got there, we had this thing that we'll give you support. And then we read this thing to them and said, oh, and by the way, you can't come back for 6 months. Sort of rule. And I said, can I see that for a second? Yeah. Tear that thing up, right? Done with it. And I had a military spouse walk into our offices very humbly, and you could tell she had some stuff going on. And this is where we broke our rules, of course. Her husband was an E7 on deployment. Her daughter just had brain surgery at Navy Medical Center.
Wow.
And the doctor said, you should get a new mattress for your daughter's recovery. So what did she do? She sold their queen-size mattress to buy a twin. The twin had mold inside of it. It was a used mattress. The reason she did that is so she could get some food, right? She was turned away by 2 nonprofits, okay? And came in, and this is not patting ourselves on the back, just so we're clear, but she came into the Armed Services Y, no questions asked. We assisted her. We called one of our donors. Can I say who it was?
Sure.
I think I can. Jerome's Furniture. And Jerome's, within an hour, said, we got this. How many mattresses, how many linens, all that stuff. And off they went and took care of that family. And serendipitously, her son, who had autism, needed a bike to get to school. And wouldn't you know it, a donor walked in when she was there and said, and he says, I have a brand new bike in my car. Does anyone need it?
Oh my
Fit
goodness.
that kid, got him a bike, and off they went.
Amazing.
And we stayed in touch with the family too. But this is that gray area. It's not one of our programs or services, but it's someone who came to us in need. And there's no rules. This is a human being you're dealing with. So just do that and let that be part of your process.
One of the most empowering, motivating things that I experienced over the last couple of years from the vantage point of working with funders is seeing them break their own rules, recognizing that in the time of COVID, with so many people suddenly being food insecure, housing insecure, losing their jobs, there are a lot of rules to philanthropy. We've created a vast system that tells us when and how to fund and what's required in exchange. There's not, we are working towards a world in which trust-based philanthropy is sort of the coin of the realm. And we saw that come to life during COVID. I wonder if you experienced that, and or what would you say to funders? Here are some rules that are actually making it harder for us to work together towards the mission that we share.
I love when a funder comes to meet with us personally. And I love also when they're connected to other funders who trust them. And they have a real conversation with us about our needs and the needs of our constituents. And we can have that dialogue. And the funding comes in a way where they trust us, where they're basically going to say, Tim and company, do with these dollars what needs to be done, as opposed to how many numbers will you serve. Sure. Because what you focus on, if you're going to make it a numbers game, all of a sudden we're thinking, oh, well, we don't have good numbers. Let's get good numbers so we get our next funding round, right? Sort of thing. I really think it should be focused on, obviously you have to have numbers as a measurement, but it should really be focused on the impact of those, of who you're serving.
Beautiful.
More specifically, right? So I love the donor when they come in and say, here's X amount of dollars and use it for your highest and best need. We trust you as an organization, and it allows us to serve in a way where we don't have, we're not trying to follow measurements, matrices, so to speak.
Yeah, go for impact. I love
right?
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. This has been so fun. We've learned a lot, and I look forward to continuing.
I'm so happy I get to be part of it, so thanks so much.
Great.
Yeah.